How's it going, Facebook Live? This is David Trigg on this beautiful day. I want to talk to you about here, kind of on a whiteboard, explaining to you what to do when your relationship is at a crossroad. There are many times, whether it's in a love relationship with a boyfriend, girlfriend, with your husband and wife, it could even be just with your boss or somebody in your family, where your relationship hits a bump along the road, a crossroad, where there's a break in trust, there's a break in the way things have been, and now you are tempted to bail on the relationship or on the marriage or on the employee-boss relationship, or you are tempted to hang in there but not really resolve things. A lot of times, the reason why people stay in bad relationships or they don't work things out is because they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid that they may lose that job. They're afraid to be honest about how they feel. They're afraid to mess things up because there's a certain level of stability, a certain level of of ease when we let things be as they are. But in my experience, whether it's been just in people that I've seen, my own experience, or things that I've learned, I feel like God brings these tests along the way to catapult us and prepare us for greater impact in a relationship. In other words, there comes a time when we are just kind of bumping along. Maybe you can see this. Let me use another pen. It might be a little bit darker for you. Things are kind of going well in your relationship as an employee, as a boyfriend, girlfriend, marriage, whatever it may be. But then you hit friction. There comes a place, a time where you hit some static. And now this is the problem area. What do you do when you hit that static point? So I find that there are two things that you really have to be aware of. First of all is that you have two choices to make. Number one and number two. And that each choice is going to have consequences, positive and negative. Now, the first choice is to make your relationship a priority. In other words, to choose love. You're going to choose each other. You're going to say, I'm going to stay in this relationship. I'm going to make things work out. And that is the choice that you're going to make. And now that choice is going to have now a path that you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to then get on a path that has consequences. You may still lose a job. You may still have to move out. You may have to still go to counseling. You might have to leave that job or that relationship. But you are saying to that partner, to the person that you love, you are my priority. Now, the other choice is simple. You can say, I am going to break and end that relationship. In other words, that whatever happened in your relationship really just brought out what has already been there. I'm going to move this camera a bit so you can see. In other words, it just brought out what you already have been desiring or wanting, or what has been already written on the wall for years. By the way, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and leave me a comment. Hello guys, nice to have you here. So, many times people feel that when there is a break in a relationship or there's a break in trust, that it's something new or it came out of nowhere. But really, many times, it only brings out, thank you so much for the likes, comments, it only brings out what was already there. And so if you then choose to end that relationship, there's also going to be a cost and a consequence. Here's a principle. Consequence is unavoidable. The consequences to whatever you choose are unavoidable. There will be a price to pay if you choose love or to end the relationship. In other words, when you choose to work things out or if you choose to not work things out. Let's take the easy way out. Let's say it's in a boss-employee relationship. You choose to work things out with your boss. Well, now that there has been a break in that trust, meaning you got into an argument, something went bad, you got a bad review, something happened that broke the norm, the status quo. Now you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to still resolve things. There may be some consequences. Your boss may be right to call you on certain things. You might have a point in arguing that you're not getting paid enough, that there was something that happened even years ago that made you feel or not valuable, not valued in the organization, in the nonprofit, in the church. So you can't avoid having to go through a process. And this is why most people don't work things out. They remain in a cycle of anger or bouncing from relationship to relationship, mostly from bad to worse, or they keep making the same mistakes no matter what job they take. Now, the second thing, let me talk about another thing. So there are consequences to both. There are also benefits to both. There are great benefits to both. You may say, well, what's the benefit of ending a marriage? Well, it may be that you get what you want. It might be that you are no longer in a marriage that you think isn't meant to be, that God isn't in that marriage. It could be that you're in an abusive relationship. And so there could be a benefit to ending a relationship. Let's say back to a work, an employee thing. There could be a benefit that you end up going to something that is more you, that pays you better, where they treat you right, where you have a better working environment. Now, the process though, the reason why people don't go through, they don't choose, they just keep, like I said, going in this cycle, is because even though they want the benefit, they are afraid to choose, or they are afraid to go through the process. Because that's why I drew these lines like this. The process is often messy, imperfect, and not quick and easy. Back to love. But if you choose, what's the advantage of choosing love? Of choosing to work things out with the person that you love? Of choosing to improve your marriage? Well, I just gave you the answer. You are going to gain a better relationship. You're going to receive more intimacy. You're going to have a greater level of trust and of working as one in your marriage, in your relationship. What's the advantage of working things out at work? Well, stability. It could be that you get what you wanted. You get that $10 raise or $5 raise or whatever it may be. You gain a level of confidence in being able to speak up for your rights. There's a great benefit of working things out. So this is simple. The problem comes not in seeing this. This is, I think, everyone would agree. The problem, actually, let me go back to the first one. The problem is that when a break comes, that when a situation comes into our lives, where you have to face the music and a rupture happens, where something goes wrong, the problem, as I said, is that most people then they go into an endless cycle of blame and of hate, or of self-hate. They either hate the other or they hate themselves. So that's what happens with most situations, is we all face breaks in our relationships. The status quo is never status. It's always moving. But because of our apprehension as humans to pain and really to work, we then get into a cycle, and you meet people, right? Every day. You know people, friends of yours, family members, that are stuck right now as we speak in this endless cycle of blame and of hate and of shame and resentment. Now, there are levels to this. But I would say that for the most part, it is one or the other. Either they hate everyone else or they blame others. And many people would say that that's 80% of people. 80% of people, maybe would be just a fun test, is ask yourself, do you think most people that are in this endless cycle of blame, do they mostly blame other people? Maybe they even blame you if you're the parent, or if you're the caretaker. Maybe you're the leader, you're the boss. Do they blame you? Or, let's say 20%, they blame themselves. And that's where depression, where suicide, where anxiety and feelings of lack of self-worth and of deep insecurity sets in. And you have people that are in this cycle, many of them for a whole lifetime, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And so what is then the solution? how do you then help people choose one or the other? Well, really, the way that God does it is He brings into our lives what I call, or what's traditionally called, checks, or in other words, these tests. And there are different kinds of tests. This is from a book that I've read that I love it, that I recommend. It's called The Making of a Leader. It talks about different checks, like a checkpoint. You're driving along Lakewood Boulevard or Bellflower, or you're on the 405, and there's a checkpoint, and you get off the freeway, and you have to then go through a checkpoint. You're going into Mexico, you're coming back in. You have to go through a security place. You're in an airport. All of these stops are necessary to check what you're carrying, if you're safe, to make sure that everything's going well. In life, the same thing happens. God, by His grace, and really life, and I would say even just sometimes just the pain of life, Satan himself, all of these things come into reality to bring about these checkpoints, these integrity checks. Now, integrity could be just one check, but it could be a moral check. It could be a ideological check or a test. It could be a faith check. There are about 4 or 5 major checks that most humans, most leaders, most men and women go through in life. It could be a love check, and that could be an integrity check. So, for example, you have, again, back to a marriage, that there is an affair. There is a break in trust. The husband bails on the wife. The wife finds out that the man has been cheating, or that he's been involved in pornography, or the girlfriend realizes or finds out that the boyfriend has been texting 3 other girls. So those are all integrity checks. It could be an issue of money, where your integrity, your financial integrity has been ruptured. You've been found out by the government, by someone that you love, by your boss. All of these, as you can feel, they're pretty heavy tests, moral tests. They test your character. The fact that you're not as much of a patient person as you thought. Somebody calls you out, and whether it's God or a friend or a boss, it could be something positive or negative, that they call out the fact that your morality, meaning your character, your patience, your love, is not what you thought it was. They see you for who you really are. Ideological tests or checks. It could be that that could go a little bit with your faith, but it could also deal with politics. It could be how you see social justice. It could see of how you see racial tension. In many ways, we're facing ideological tests as we speak as a nation and as a world. What are we going to believe is right? What is true? What is greatness really mean for us as a people? Does it mean to divide? Does it mean to unite? Who do we unite with? What do we divide across? Are there some divisions that are good versus some things that are dangerous or non-profitable? And then faith, I think for most of us, I know that watch my streams, we have a faith background. We are pastors, leaders, churchgoers. We love Jesus. We love to honor God. We want to serve and help the world. But have you ever noticed how for Peter, how you could say even for Jesus at Gethsemane, certainly for Judas, certainly for Paul, there were these faith tests where they were challenged to go deeper with God and to examine, to doubt, to shed, and to betray everything that they once knew as gospel truth. The way that they saw church, the way who you may think is in and who's out. And a lot of times, not even other people's faiths that you doubt or that you have to, you go through this test. It's your own faith. Is your own identity in Christ. And all of these tests, they seem as things that rupture our lives. In other words, that they come into our lives to basically destroy us. And at first, that is what they do. They destroy how things used to be. But in Christ, and through tools, and through knowledge, and through love, and through relationship, and through healing, and through really just you being faithful to God, these checkpoints are really designed to bring you into a greater place of victory and of freedom and of destiny. That destiny that you know is yours, to be a powerful speaker, to be an amazing husband, to be a woman who's changing the world through your jewelry or through your art, whatever call you have upon your life, this destiny that you have been called to accomplish, that God has ordained for you, will only come if you take these integrity checkpoints, these integrity tests, these moral, ideological faith tests, and you may want to add one or two that are peculiar to you. If you hang on to Jesus, and if you don't lose heart, because right here at what's called hitting bottom, you think of AA and all these things, that's the moment of truth, right? That's the moment when you have to make that choice. Am I going to hang on to God, or am I going to hang on to self? And I would say that we all know, maybe, again, 80% of our friends that have chosen self. Right here, the choice at that point, especially, I would say, for those of us that follow God, the choice at that point is really simple. Kind of going back to those two choices, is to choose, you're at that moment of truth. You're going to choose self, or you're going to choose the other, or God. The Bible is very explicit when it comes to this. Jesus says you cannot worship both mammon or self or wealth or basically yourself and God. You have to choose one or the other. The Bible calls it that there is a path that is wide that leads to destruction. This is the wide path. And this is the narrow path. That is why it is so rare to see people choose God and not choose self. That is why it is so easy, and move the camera here a bit more. That is why it is so common, and we would say we all are pretty much convinced that the only way to resolve a break in your life or a crisis is by turning to more of yourself. I mean, it is everywhere. What I call the third eye Christianity or New Age Christianity. This mixture of saying, you got it. You are your own God. I mean, it's everywhere. Just go through your feed. You're going to see selfishness. You're going to see people politically, religiously, ideologically, all the things we talked about, all these integrity checks that are choosing self. Self-pity, self-awareness, self-focus, egotisticalness, egotism, I'm making up words, versus God. Now, why is this binary? Why is this us versus them? Because the flesh is powerful. And whether you can go to any faith tradition, you can go to any religion, but certainly the Christian faith talks about the reality of the flesh versus the spirit. That's why the Bible constantly talks about walk in the spirit and deny, kill, destroy the desires of the flesh. The flesh is what says you are right. You have a right to be angry at that person that hurt you. You have a right to be depressed for the rest of your life. You have a right to blame everyone else for what's happened to you. You have a right to never forgive the person who hurt you as a young girl, as a young man. You have a right to remain in that vicious cycle of shame and disparity and trust. And everyone, they owe you. Now, am I talking about, as I said, about being just a superhero? No. Am I talking about letting people walk all over you? No. If you choose love, in other words, the way of the Spirit, you're going to still have to go through a process. There's still going to be a cost that you have to pay. In other words, and Jesus calls it that you have to carry your cross. Carry the cross and follow me. To choose love, to choose to work things out with your husband, with your boss, with yourself, is going to require a process. Now, here's the good news. Guess where the grace and the power of God is? It's not here. God is not here. He's not going to help you destroy yourself. But He is going to give grace, He says, to the humble. But He resists the proud. Not only is he not in this arena, but actually he resists those who resist him. Like he says in the Bible, he says, if you deny me in front of men, I will deny you in front of my Father. Isn't that a very needed message today? We need to know that God is against us when we walk in the flesh. And that's why we have to pray for people that are walking in darkness. It's not that God doesn't love that person. I'm not saying that God has sent them and left them to their own devices. I mean, in some ways he has, as Romans 12 says. But my point is that he is not working with you to stay in your mess. Don't ever think that God is helping you be depressed and angry. That's not God. That's you. But God is going to help you if you choose him. It says that he gives grace when we humble ourselves, when we're contrite. Is that like some quick and easy fix? No way. When you choose love and you choose to work things out with a person that you love, with you and God, with whatever thing has been broken, that trust, you know, you can be guaranteed that you have the help of God. And so it could be that today you're dealing with just personal pain. It's easy to know that these days most people are facing a certain kind of internal battle, emotional chaos, emotional constipation, I call it, where we are stuck in that cycle I mentioned of despair, of hate, of blaming others, blaming ourselves. What is going to help us break that cycle is to be humble and to surrender to love, to surrender to God, to surrender to the fact that you are not your own God. Now, if you know people that are still trying to be their own God, then what you can do is pray for them. Don't tell them that they're okay. Don't tell them that you are for them. Don't tell people that are destroying their lives that it's okay to do so. Don't be arrogant. Don't be a moralist, the moral police telling everybody that you're right. No. What you're appealing to is to forgiveness, to restoration. Are there moments when a relationship, an employee relationship or marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, or even school education, are there moments where you have to go your separate ways? I think we see that everywhere. And certainly at work and in those kinds of relationships, there obviously are times when you have to go your separate ways. But my point is not that you are going to avoid the inevitable. My point is, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get to the benefit of your choice? Are you going to do it by ending hope, basically closing your mind to other people, closing your mind and being just stuck in your ways and digging in your heels? Or are you going to choose the path of love and of restoration? The result may be the same. Here's the bad news, I guess. You may choose the right path that leads to abundance, and you may still end up with a broken marriage. You may still end up with having to leave that job or that business. So there is no promise of heaven here on earth right away. At some point, you might be able to look back and say, that really was heaven on earth. Even though in the moment, it felt more like hell than heaven. But immediately, and a lot of times for the near future, even if we choose love, we still have to, as I said, go through a process. So why do it? Because God is with you. Because there's blessing when we do that. Because there is also the amazing possibility of restoration. And in fact, there is always that promise of redemption and of restoration and of hope. If you are at a place where you've lost hope for your marriage, for your relationship, for you as a pastor in your church, whatever relationship you're dealing with, that maybe you've come to that crossroads, choose love, choose peace, choose the path of least resistance, or maybe I should say of most resistance. That's the hardest path. Even though it may be easier to just bail and to simply just forget life and just check out, that path will always lead to disruption. Choose the path that leads to abundance. It may not happen next week. You'll still have to go through a process. There may be some loss. There may be some consequences to your actions. There will be some issues, and like I said, carrying the cross that you'll have to do. But you can be assured that eventually there will be abundance in your life. I am proof of that. I know that you are proof of that. I know you know many people that are proof of the abundant life. Thanks so much. Make sure that you always give me some comments if you have any questions. My hope through these live streams is to interact, and if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas, to be able to help each other out. And as I share and teach you, my Gozo friend, how to live a life of joy in spite of challenges. And my favorite verse, as you know, is Psalm 30, verse 6, that says that though there is pain in the night, gozo, or joy, comes in the morning. Have a great rest of this day. Check out my podcast. I just did a great episode, davidtrigg.com/152, called How to Love Other People, how to share the love of God with others. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.